fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rhythm, both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my god! Oh. Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go! Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
It's that time again. We're getting into IndyCars around Belle Isle. What more is there to be said? Well, a lot, actually. My name's Reese Gardner. This is SimSpeed TV's broadcast of the International Division of the Majors Series, the duel in Detroit, the Belle Isle Grand Prix in the IndyCars. Of course, we got Jay Kennedy on cameras, and joining me alongside in the commentary box, David Haynes. David, we have got a grand total of 70 laps of racing around the Belle Isle Street Circuit tonight, and it may be sunny in the sim, but my goodness, the heat is certainly turning up in the sim rigs as well.
Yes, certainly. This is not an easy combination to drive. No street course is easy, and this one, it's in that true fashion of street courses, concrete canyon, walls either side. And then, of course, you look at some cars like these Indy cars, quite aerodynamically dependent. They're light, but they've got big underbody aero, they've got big wings on them. That means in the slow corners, they're tough. And this track is also pretty bumpy, and they're powerful cars. So you got to be careful not to spin up those rear tires and maybe end up nose first, crumpling some carbon fiber into a barrier. It's going to be a little bit of caution required for whoever our eventual winners in these races may be. This is a very tough car track combination, but it can produce good racing.
Oh yeah, for sure. The Belle Isle Street Circuit, actually in use since, I believe, the mid-90s or thereabouts in a couple of different configurations. And it's on a bit of parkland on an island next to the central business district of Detroit. So it's a lot of light tarmac that sees a lot of use over the years, and it altogether is a very bumpy experience. It's almost Monaco-like in terms of challenge and what it's like to drive around this circuit.
Yeah, indeed. As we looking at maybe some shots of the cars that are out there in that practice right now, and the walls are right next to the racetrack almost everywhere, but there's a few places where there's a little bit of grass around, and all that does is give you a little bit more space to loop the car before you still eventually go into the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were looking at Dave Douglas as he made his way around the circuit there. Let's take a look at the championship standings while we're at it, because it's really starting to heat up in terms of this championship. The sportsman teams standings. RCD Sim Sports leading the charge with MF Racing 1 just 82 points behind. That is a really tight battle for the top of the sportsman standings.
Yeah, of course, there's a few divisions here in the majors. There's the pro drivers, the sportsman's drivers, and then also the teams divisions of both of those as well.
Yeah, exactly. The next one is the Legends division for drivers over 50 years of age. And John King, as we've seen throughout the season, is absolutely dominating. He's one of the quickest drivers in this field, and he's with the strongest team, arguably, Kinetics. So he's really put a number on the likes of Gavin Barber, Scott Kukas, Craig Hopkins, and N.A. McCall.
Yeah, and we're now getting close to the halfway point in the season, so really clean race going to be required, and this is a combination where that's going to be difficult. So this is, I think, a real turning point in the championship.
Yeah, certainly is. Sportsman division drivers standings, meanwhile, it's another close battle. Dave Douglas versus Eric Thorpe up the top. Matt Hunter and Riley Curtis behind them. Split off a bit, but they are in their own very close battle as well. Just 1 point separating them, third and fourth.
Yeah, amazing. So close battles there in that sportsman division of the drivers championship.
Exactly, and the pro division, the championship that is the main one that operates here. Cam Dance versus Jason Martin up at the top, and Martin's had a poor run of luck in the most recent couple of rounds of this series. Different kinds of racing. Not exactly helping him out there. Of course, this is one of the most varied championships that we broadcast on the iRacing Esports Network, but up and down the field, those points numbers tell the real story, and the pro team standings show just how much of a mark Kinetic Swift is stamping on this field. 1,667 points to the next team.
Yeah, exactly, and that just goes to show from the two cars they've got in the top 8 of the drivers' standings. A point standing like that, it can't be a one-man army. It's got to be a concerted effort from a group of guys to all of them get consistent results, and that shows for Kinetic Swift Racing in this time zone of the Majors series.
Yeah, absolutely does. We have about 5 minutes left till the end of this warm-up session before we go for the first of our 35 lap races. So now is an opportune time to take a bit of a tour around this circuit. Christopher Norton was the top driver currently in this session, a 1 minute 12.861. is the time that he set, and that is 9 tenths ahead of Brett Gerards in second. So we will take a tour very shortly with Christopher Norton around this track, see what it's like from a driver's perspective.
And hopefully, as we have the races in front of us, that'll give everyone a real respect for how tough these Indy cars are to drive with all of their power on a street circuit, and just how bumpy some of the places around this track are.
Yeah, exactly. We're continuing to take a look at the scenic scenes around the circuit as the drivers make their way around. And you see the curbs as well in shot. And we've got a lovely field of cars here today. Some of the nicest looking liveries we've seen all season.
Of course, they know they're going to be broadcast. They put some good effort into them, and as we mentioned, quite a few teams take Majors Series very, very seriously, and that just doesn't go for your practice and your setups. That carries on as they try and get those words out to how they present their cars.
Yeah, exactly. We're seeing a lot of cars out on track just getting their final settings dialed in. Chris Purnell and the like out at the moment, but we are currently on board with Christopher Norton. Taking a look at these amazing twisty sections of this fantastic circuit. Not much margin for error around here. Those bumps don't necessarily agree with Indy cars.
Yeah, you can do everything you want with the suspension settings, but there's just no getting around the physics of the situation. This is a car that is low to the ground, with very low center of gravity and limited suspension travel. Bumps in the concrete and the asphalt, some of those worked in from the harsh winters in this part of the world, some of it from the road usage of the public roads when it's not a racetrack, and all those things combined for a bumpy circuit, especially in a couple of the braking zones.
Yeah, precisely. And the lap one melee is always a possibility here. Those first couple of turns, they're actually fast sweepers. Yes, they're bumpy, but at the same time, you can still carry a lot of speed through them. We got a full field of cars taking a rolling start like they usually do in the IndyCar series. You can see quite a bit of jostling back in the pack to that first braking zone of turn 3.
And that's probably going to be one of the bigger overtaking spots. You get a good run through the sweepings, turn 1 and 2, and get the power down well over that little bridge. Then the straight down towards turn 3 is probably the easiest braking zone, easiest overtaking spot, even if you can also overtake at the backside of the circuit going down the strand.
Yeah, exactly. And as we enter the last 100 or so seconds of this session, there's quite a bit of beautiful scenes to be seen from the chopper cams and the like. Remember, this is in a public park. A couple of beautiful fountains and a lot of greenery on this island. So it's one of the perfect environments for racing.
And you talk about that greenery. We've got the best broadcast team for that, because the fountain is called the Scott Fountain here.
Yeah, exactly. And we tend to make that a bit of a running joke here, don't we? Of course, one of the main guys here at SimSpeed TV is named Scott Fountain. So when we all found that out, we had a whale of a time with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not often you get a fantastic coincidence like that. So milk it for all it is worth. And of course, in typical tradition around here, the winner gets to jump in the fountain. A bit hard to do that virtually, but you can tell yourself you did.
Yeah, exactly right. So last 30 seconds of the session, the gaps as we look down the timesheets, they're reasonably spread out. I'm looking at the battles for I think that's 5th and 6th. Daniel Stevens and Dwayne Burns there, both doing 14.4s. The times are close around here.
In the mid-pack, certainly, but it's so tough to get that last 1 second out of the car on a street circuit like this. And I think that's why we see, some gaps that are closer to, 1 minute 12 is the fastest practice time we've seen, down to there's quite a few drivers whose fastest times in the 1 minute 16s or even 1 minute 17s. Car like this, street course, that's why it's so difficult to get that last second, sort of separates the boys from the men, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. So, final preparations here as we begin. And this is the starting grid. Christopher Norton sits on pole position with Cam Dance lining up alongside him. Dwayne Burns and Michael Skurlock share the second row. Brett Gerards and Chris Purnell on row 3. Will Leslie for Kinetic in 7th. And Aldous Pateklis rounding out the top 8.
Yeah, behind that, it's going to be Robert Northway alongside Jamie Burnow on row 5. 11th place starts with Daniel Stevens, and he's going to be alongside Mirko Dortanak. Trevor Mack and Eric Thorpe have the 7th row of the grid, and the 8th row is Tyrone Da Silva and Alexander Sheridan.
As we move on further down the grid, Wayne Taylor in car 998 in 17th. John King starting on the verge of the top 18, and Shane Bowe and Gavin Barber sharing row 10. Dave Douglas and Matt Clote and Scott Kukas and Matt Hunter completing the top 24 there.
And just a few more drivers. We've got Raul Alvarez and Ryan Ducati and McCarthy. And then the back row here is made up of Roy Clark and Riley Curtis. The cars are getting ready to go rolling very, very shortly.
Certainly are. 28 cars in this grid, so a very healthy one indeed. This is a brief look at the weather settings here that we've got. It's a reasonably cool track. And the green flag is out. Away we go. Christopher Norton and Cam Dance actually staying quite even on the start, but Cam Dance going round the outside through turn 1, taking the lead through turn 2. Remember, Dance is the championship leader. Big crash in the background. The track getting blocked. Jamie Burnow involved in that, and a lot of cars upside down. Trevor Mack with huge damage as well. Daniel Stevens trying to get going. It's a traffic jam down there.
Cars going 2 wide, maybe even 3 wide across that bump on the exit of turn 2 has not worked. Plenty of cars have gone into the wall, and Christopher Norton having more troubles there. He's dropped a bunch of spots. He started very high up, now running in 12th. Problems for him, but Cam Dance, I think, is now your leader. Let's have a look at the replay of the chaos at the start.
Yeah, thanks to Modem Simulation for this. Brett Gerards, we have the camera trained on, and oh my goodness, that was either Bowen or Burns that was spun around by that contact, and you see his teammate there, but that resulted in a lot of upside downery. It was Burns. Remember, this is the guy who started in 3rd place. And he just gets turned around. Have a look at that. No recovering that, and the rest of the field just piling into him. No escaping.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of sickening to watch it, but right up the front here, this is what happened to Christopher Norton, trying to battle wheel to wheel with Cam Dance. And we said a lot of horsepower in these cars, bumpy, difficult to put the power down in lots of places, and that's probably not the first spin on corner exit we've seen. These turbocharged cars, you put the throttle down, and it can sometimes take a quarter of a second before all the power comes on, and when it does, you see stuff like that.
Oh. Yeah, and Will Leslie and Chris Purnell getting together there for the top 5, and you see just how on the ragged edge these guys are. Norton trying to desperately make his way back up through the field, currently in 10th. This is Alexander Sheridan right in front of him. Just coming down this slightly curved back stretch. You mentioned the turbo, David. These cars have twin turbo V6 engines, so they got to put the torque down. Oh, that was very close back there. Almost a crash.
Yeah, margin for error very, very small at these speeds, and so the fact they've carried on there is quite a blessing. And looking at Mirko Dortanak, I remember he was quite far down on the grid. He's made up 6 spots in the start, presumably by avoiding some of that chaos in turn 2. Now finds himself in a little train here, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, all racing together, and Chris Purnell in 4th. There's a little bit of a cork in the bottle here.
Yeah, seems that way. It's incredibly close as they come through turn 1, and that's where the aero push comes in. Will Leslie with damage. He's in 14th, and oh, there he goes, straight into the pits. Let's go for another Modem Simulation replay, see what happened to him.
Damage was already there at the back of the strand, so he's damaged it Even earlier than that,
Oh,
he's lived
no.
quite a lot of damage a long way. Car's snapped there in the left-hander, and he's hit that wall hard. No room to save, just a little twitch like that when the wall is right there.
Yeah, we'll have to, we might have to continue with that replay because there we go. Christopher Norton was involved in that smash there. All of the cars just getting together in the braking zone to turn 3, and Norton had absolutely nowhere to go.
Those two cars tangled some more. It's like putting headphones in your pocket, and what the cables do, those two cars could not get clear of each other, and that's cost both of them a lot of time.
Yeah, it's quite disappointing for Christopher Norton. Remember, he was our pole sitter. We're taking a look at Tyrone De Silva. He carried some damage. He was involved in that incident as well. So missing half his front wing, he might have to get in to repair that.
The good news is, though, that a front wing can be changed a lot quicker than suspension damage. And we see another front wing. It's a good time to be in the industry of carbon fiber laying.
Yeah, certainly. This is a replay of what happened to Scott Kukas. Going very hard into the double apex left-hander and out of this hairpin. See, there's some bumps right through the middle as you go through the crown and the road. And these turbo cars, man, they spin up the tires very easily, and it's easy to get into that wall. So what happened to Roy Clark here as we keep our cameras trained on him? Straight into the wall in the final sector. No runoff at all there.
That car just did not.
Oh, there's been another crash. Eric Thorpe, he's around. So let's have a look at what happened to him. It's all going off here. The race is happening faster than we can keep up.
I said survival was going to be critical, but it's proving deadly out there.
Oh,
we get another replay. Christopher Norton, not his race at all.
What is going on?
Spin. These are difficult cars, and these guys are pushing really hard. What I really hope for, though, is that everyone learns some of the limits in this first race, and they do have another one coming up.
Yeah, they certainly do. Well, you just saw Cam Dance way out there in the lead, but this is Wayne Taylor versus De Silva. Remember, De Silva carrying damage, and he's yielding going into the pits, so Taylor just carrying on, and he's facing some pressure from behind, but even further behind, there's what's happening. And Barber, he's looking quite racy there.
Yes, that's Wayne Taylor and Gavin Barber. And Barber, as you rightly say, putting the pressure on. Little spin here for Eric Thorpe again. So it's just so treacherous out there in these cars. All of these drivers struggling, even drivers and names that we know to be very competent in other machinery.
Yeah, exactly right. And Leslie trying to get going there as De Silva continues picking his way through this bramble he's found himself in. And John King around 2. I'm not quite sure what's gone on in this race, but it seems like everyone has been involved in a spin or a crash of some kind, except for our race leader. We have to remember that there is some very strong winds out on track. It results in a really big tailwind down the back stretch, but big crosswinds just about everywhere else. So cars as aerodynamically sensitive as these are going to have a very rough time.
Yeah, indeed. 26 kilometers an hour or so on the wind, about 13 knots, and that's very good kite flying weather. Certainly these cars, light but lots of aerodynamic surfaces on them, would feel those crosswinds in certain places. Sure, you're on board with Robert Northway, he just keeps that out of the wall. You're sheltered by the walls in some places, but then you'll come around a corner where the breeze can blow down the length of the track and it'll all hit you at once.
Absolutely. Our third place runner, of course, is Mr. Northway. He's had consistent performances in this series, but even he is not immune to the pitfalls of Belle Isle. The super slow section around the middle of the lap is one that catches out a lot of drivers because it seems like you can take it faster than you can. Not much downforce acting in that section, and the tarmac is very low grip. We got another spin. Looks like a Swift Kinetic car. Eric Thorpe continuing to have issues. He was running up in the top 5 beforehand.
Yeah, so a little bit of bent rear wing for him. Looking at Scott Kukas. Oh my goodness. So Tyrone De Silva has come around the corner there and a very slow Kukas in front of him, and he's spun it around trying to avoid that, and that has cost big time for Tyrone De Silva, who was running very well indeed. Here comes a replay of that one, and I imagine we'll come around a corner to be surprised by a slow-moving car. He just had to avoid one there, and then 2 corners later is where this incident happens.
Yeah, exactly. So going through the left-hander, big bumps, and he's thinking, oh, no. There we go, rear end gone. Very difficult to save once the rear tyres go.
He's already a bit wide of the corner, maybe in a little bit hot, and then the slow car in front of him. It all transpired into a big spin. This is a great battle here, though, deeper down the field. Riding on board with that must be Trevor Mack. He's trying to hunt down Dwayne Burns, and both of these guys have dropped big spots off the grid. Dwayne Burns was 3rd on the grid, now down into 20th in a fight of his life to try and recover here. And Trevor Mack looks like to be keeping with him.
Yeah, certainly. Burns actually carrying a bit of damage still to his front wing, I believe. So slight bit of aero fiddling needed. You can see Burns has really got the power down nicely out of the slow corners. That's where his strengths seem to be around here.
And of course, the gear ratio is very, very adjustable in a car like this. So how you decide on that for a street course, you try and focus on that acceleration out of the corner, or do you evenly space them? You know, you can do lots of stuff like that. Or maybe you have a really tall first gear so that you don't spin up those tires coming off the really slow corners.
Yes, indeed. Swap for position between Sheridan and Purnell there. That's for 4th place. And Purnell with a bit of damage and Ryan to... Oh, dear. Oh, that's a very awkward position for Ducati and McCarthy to be in. Let's see how that transpired.
Motive simulation replay looking from the TV cameras, and I imagine it's looped around and he's just ended up in that awkward spot through the right-hander here, putting the power down. Round it goes, nose in, and then trying to flick spin to recover that. That's been what's so difficult for him here. He's not been able to do that. He's had to have a second take, and that was that vision we saw live. He had to have a second take at trying to get that thing turned around 180 degrees. Then Eric Thorpe, obviously that scared him. As we follow the replay with him, he's had an issue of some kind as well.
Yeah, well, he's coming up to the first couple of turns here. Wondering if it happened through there. Yep, it did. Just getting loose over the bumps once again. You push these cars too hard. I mean, they can only go so soft on the springs in these things. So Belle Isle's a real trial around here. But we're seeing positions swapping left, right, and center. Now Michael Skurlock and Robert Northway finding themselves battling for the podium. And Northway versus Skurlock for this podium position. He's only a couple seconds behind as Wayne Taylor, we see yet another spinner.
Story of this race so far, but looking live, this is the best battle we've got up the top of the field. Purnell, we know, limping with some aerodynamic damage. So Matthew Clowett trying to make the move, goes to the right-hand side. That's going to be the inside in the braking zone up here, and he gets that job done. Purnell, with damage from earlier, but still taking that car around. It means that he has lost a few spots, and Clowett is just another one.
Yeah, exactly. Matt Hunter and Will Leslie battling here, and we got to start thinking about strategy as well when it comes to the likes of Purnell, as we see almost a move being made. That corner is faster than it looks, and you can hold round the outside, but just getting the better exit was Mr. Leslie there. But anyway, strategy. The car can go about 23 laps on a tank of fuel, and of course they're going to have to go for a tyre change as well. Possibility of an overcut. These cars don't have tyre warmers. You need to get them up to temperature first.
Yeah, that's very true. They're cold when they come out of the blankets, and it does take a lap or so to warm those tyres up. And of course, once you've gone long into your stint and the car's light on fuel, and you've got tyres that are warm, it can be very quick then. It's a car that's very sensitive to how much of the fuel load is on board. Just like the HPD, for example, in the LMP2 class, where, you know, very sensitive to the fuel load, not so much to the tyre wear, although new tyres do have a little bit more grip than the older ones.
Yeah, exactly. So here we continue to take a look at Chris Purnell. He is facing a lot of pressure from Shane Bowen, Dwayne Burns' teammate. He's going to be flying the flag as Purnell after Burns' rotten luck on the first lap. Of course, Purnell suffering a lot of understeer due to that heavy damage to his front wing, but he'll want to stay out as long as possible. No need to lose more time getting a wing replaced and adding it onto a stop than any positions you might lose just cruising around out on track. This track isn't hugely downforce dependent, except through that section right there.
Exactly. You said 23 laps to a tank of fuel, and we've got 24 laps to go. This move might happen right now, and Purnell probably brakes a little bit early for that one, but it really looks like Purnell is just staying out until that fuel window opens, and they can probably change a front wing pretty quick while they're also changing the tyres and adding fuel.
Yes, indeed. Meanwhile, Northway closing in on Skurlock, and they've got Tyrone De Silva right in the middle of them. Lap traffic here. De Silva with a repaired car now, still having a few troubles with it though on exit. Just letting Northway go, and he can resume the chase of Skurlock, but it looks like the battle for second is going to be one to watch.
Yeah, precisely. Northway doing a great job trying to close that gap back in, and now there's no more traffic between them. He'll be able to catch up somewhat. What we do know is that in each race, each driver has 10 push-to-passes available, and once they can use them for extra power, try and get a position done, or try and close the gap, or try and defend. They only get 10 of them, and when they use them, it uses more fuel. So if some of these guys are trying to save them up for the last stint after they've taken their pit stop, they might find they don't have enough fuel to use them if they didn't factor that into account. So it's a strategic thing that you don't want to use too early in the race, but you don't want to be left in the last 5 minutes of the race holding on to all of them.
Yeah, exactly right. It's just another one of the things that goes into the experience of driving an IndyCar. It's a lot more complicated than it initially seems. Oh, Robert Northway, he just made contact with the wall coming out of that corner. A little bit of a slip up from the third place man.
Yeah, a bit of a moment. Don't see a lot of damage on the car, but we did see it cost him quite a bit of time. He was definitely getting closer to Skurlock, and then it's gone and lost him a second or so.
Well, yet more work that Northway is going to have to do in the remainder of this race, but really, the easier you work yourself around this place, the better chance you have. Cam Dance is a big example of that. He's way out in the lead at the moment, and he's just setting consistent lap times, not pushing the limits, just making sure that he stays within what he needs to, and it's really paid off for him. I mean, you said it, David, this race is about survival more than anything else.
Yeah, indeed. And Purnell, and we said when the fuel window opens...
second place! Oh, I'm so sorry, David. Michael Skurlock just had some big contact with the wall. This is going to bring Northway right back into it. He had a bit of a whoopsie out of the left-hander. I'll let you take this one.
But looking at the replay here of what happened to Skurlock, he's still holding on to second place, but he's had a big twitch on the throttle, gone across and tapped the wall on the other side. Most of the damage looks like it's to the side pod there, a little bit to the front wing. So let's let Northway close back in. And to wrap up what I was saying about Purnell, he's come into the pit lane as soon as that fuel window has opened, like we thought he might do, to try and get some repairs.
Very good observation there. So we'll have to keep an eye on Purnell throughout the rest of this one. So you can see Northway closing in on Skurlock corner by corner. You can see Skurlock struggling at high speed with that damage to his car. It may only be on the side, but remember, these cars produce a lot of downforce through their floor and diffuser. So if you damage that, then your wings aren't going to do you much good. And there we go, right there. That's the proof. So Robert Northway in the second.
Big understeer moment for Michael Skurlock there. Obviously, hadn't quite gotten to grips of how much aerodynamics he had lost. Going to watch on board from this front wing, and presumably this camera is going to end up embedded in that tyre barrier, because this is the corner that went in, and you'll see he might have just gone in too hot, locked it up. This camera angle will tell the tail. He tries to turn in and it just doesn't, and oh, that is a good angle. That's a fantastic angle.
Yeah, well, it's not a great
for the
angle
wing.
for the front. Yeah, not for the wing at all.
Get out of my head.
This is another view of what happened at turn 3. Skurlock just braking too late, and unfortunately, that's put paid to his chances of possibly winning. But anything can happen in this race.
By Northway to stay out of him, because Northway could have gone in too hot into that corner as well. If he'd followed the regular racing line, he would have hit that stricken car of Skurlock.
Yeah, absolutely. Good presence of mind from Northway there. Meanwhile, the battle for 4th and 5th here, Clote versus Sheridan. And it looks to me like Clote is lining up a move at some point on board through turns 1 and 2 here. All of that aero push in the highest speed corners on the track and the huge bump on exit. You've got to be so careful there.
Yeah, especially if you're Chevrolet powered, it's a difficult spot on the track. So the problems for Michael Skurlock means he's come into the pits to try and get those repairs done and take his fuel stop. So that's elevated Sheridan and Clote to the battle for 3rd place.
Yeah, a lot more at stake for these guys now at this point. They're driving very well, all things considered. I mean, we seem to have set into a bit of a rhythm with this race now. Not as many mistakes being made. Everyone's gotten their tires up to pressure, up to temperature. We're only seeing the occasional slip up now. These guys getting very close.
Yeah, drivers getting more in tune with the circumstances, the conditions, and getting those tires up to temperature, of course, is absolutely critical as well.
Yeah, and that 25-kilometer-an-hour crosswind through some parts of the circuit makes it even more difficult to maintain consistency around here. But Sheridan seems to have a bit more strength at this stage. Of course, he doesn't have a car close in front of him, so he's got all of the downforce he needs on that front wing.
Got my eyes on these guys and their battle, because I was trying to figure out if a driver uses their push to pass, does that position indicator on the roll hoop actually flash? And I'm not sure, but do take my word that the push to pass is very, very effective in these cars. It unlocks almost an extra 50 horsepower or so, a little bit of extra engine RPMs as well. And Riley Curtis in the pit lane, so some of the other cars. Busy place it has been this race for everyone except this man, Cam Dance, who has not pitted yet, still in the lead, and a 20-second gap is what he has in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And, oh no, more problems for John King. Small spin out of, I'm not sure what corner that is. I think it might be turn 4.
Exit of the fountain section.
Ah, yes. Okay. That's, oh yeah, the corner that many people make mistakes at as he goes over the crown and the road. Let's watch that demonstration. So he turns in, he's just slightly off the racing line in the marbles. And at that point, there's not much saving it.
He knew that that was going to go around very, very early, stood on the brakes, tried to save it, and he's maybe just dented the front wing a tiny bit. But it was very, very early on that he knew those rear tyres were going to spin up and he was going to be going around and not straight ahead. So riding on board with 4th place man, looking at 3rd place, and huge props to Matthew Clote here, with up 18 positions right now, looking at making that 19. So from 22nd on the grid, thinking about a podium. Fantastic result. It shows consistency pays.
Yeah, it's and speaking of these guys, the gap to Robert Northway is rapidly decreasing because he's just had an incident, half spin into the wall, and now he's got some damage on the front left of his car. So this battle could get extra spicy.
Precisely, and it's a race that has had no shortage of spice, as we see some of that right now. Double right-handers that lead on to the pit straight.
Ooh. Oh, Sheridan just lifting off there to let Clote go. It seems tempting to run side by side through that final corner, but the line through it is narrower than it seems. Oh no, Daniel Stevens with an issue, and that's just done more damage to his car there.
Yeah, most of the damage looked like it was on the front, and then he's added some to the left rear, so tough for all the drivers out there.
There we go. He's around. And that was the guy that was battling for a potential 3rd place. I mean, it's still an improvement from where he was, but Clote will be absolutely ruining that. Let's have a look at what happened. Just straight into turn 3 and spun it up on the exit. I think just got a little bit into the grass or a bit too much curb.
Only consolation he's got is that he is yet to pit. So that will get sorted out for him eventually. He didn't even touch the grass before that thing went
Turbo
around.
lag. Must be turbo lag or something like that. I'm not sure how advanced the turbo tech is on these IndyCar V6s, but when the turbo spools up, the wheels can spool up just as easily.
I mean, in any car with approaching 700 horsepower that's as light as this, when the rear tires do start spinning up, they start spinning up very, very quickly.
Yes, indeed. Well, one guy who has not had any of those issues is our leader, who we were just taking a look at. Scott Kukas, meanwhile, chasing down Jamie Burnau. This is the battle for 15th place. Just goes to show there's always someone to race with in this series. We just had some problems for Matt Clote. He has way overshot his pit box and has not been able to get into it. I think he's lost maybe at least 10 seconds of time. Speeding in the pits as well, apparently.
He has gone a long, long way past his pit stall there. Brought it to a stop in the fast lane and engaged reverse gear to get back into his stall. That is very, very suboptimal. Look at that. Slams on the brakes hard. Oh, my guys are back there. But maybe he just wanted to practice his reverse parallel parking on the streets of Detroit. I don't know.
Yeah, I think reverse parallel parking is going to be the last thing on Matt Clote's mind. He's got more positions that he needs to try and make up before the end of this one. Have to say, though, to come out of that and remain in 7th on track is still pretty impressive. Just goes to show he's done a better job at surviving than quite a few other drivers in this field.
Yeah, no doubt. So Robert Northway we look at in 2nd place, and he is not closing the gap to the leader, but doing all the right things to cement 2nd place when it does become his pit stop time. There's only 5 or so cars yet to pit, and we're properly past the halfway point of this race. They are your leaders, Dance, Northway here, and Sheridan and Bowen, and then John King deeper in the field. The highest placed of your drivers that have pitted is Michael Skurlock at the moment, so he might be trying to put an undercut on some drivers.
Yeah, and Skurlock making his way past Riley Curtis there. I believe he was being lapped. So Skurlock on a charge. He remains in 5th place, but Bowen just up ahead of him. Skurlock's last lap was 2.5 seconds quicker than Bowen's. That's some pace difference.
And we saw those big differences as well in the practice session. It's just some drivers can really hook it up, but not everyone, even some of the quick guys, have been able to keep it on the island, if you'll pardon the pun there, I guess.
Oh my goodness.
So looking at Shane Bowen from 5th into the lane, Alexander Sheridan also in the lane. We said 23 laps, probably the maximum a lot of these guys could go. Well, after 21, I think plenty of them are calling enough on the fuel tanks. Looking at your leader, Cam Dance, will he come in this time? I think that's the question our director is thinking about. The answer is no.
Yeah, well, he seems comfortable out there. Remember, the tyres take a while to get up to the optimum pressure and temp, but when they do, they stay there for a reasonable amount of time. So I reckon Dance is just trying to extend his first stint as long as he can, just try and enjoy the car in that condition before really trying to heat them up in his last few laps.
Yeah, indeed. This phase of the pit stops has brought a couple of battles back together, and Chris Purnell is one of them, Shane Bowen as well. And Chris Purnell, like we thought, had to pit early, get that damage fixed, but he's had a good run around since then. And so now here he is in 5th, and now he's making the moves back on some guys who got him earlier, side by side down the strand.
Yeah, and Sheridan once again yielding to that. Purnell going unchallenged back up into 5th place on track for him, as we have Robert Northway coming in for a stop, instantly getting that front wing fixed.
Old nose cone comes off, new nose cone goes on. Great work from the team there, which means the only drivers yet to have pitted is John M. King and your leader, Cameron Dance. And I've seen how expensive petrol can be in New Zealand, but I didn't know Cam was going to stretch it out that far.
Must be a force of habit with the way things are over there in terms of fuel prices. Dance with a light foot. making his way past Scott Kukas there. That just goes to show how much attrition has gone on in this race so far, that that so many guys are being lapped at this stage in the race.
And you know what? I've had a thought here. Maybe one of the things that's helped Dance go so far on that fuel while also being one of the quickest guys is he's basically led from lap 1. He hasn't had to use any of his push-to-passes. I don't know if he has or hasn't, but he hasn't needed to, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And with the pace he's got, he wouldn't have much reason to use them unless he was trying to go for fastest lap, which, well, why would you around a place like this unless you were absolutely confident? There's a replay of Purnell having another issue, more damage to repair. He is not having a good run.
Yeah, after doing the early stop to get a new front wing, he's gone and lost part of that new one just then. So a solid recovery drive, not quite working out. Dance into the pit lane for what he's hoping to be his one and only stop here, and John King also in the lane, missing his stall. So I don't know what's going on. Plenty of guys really struggling to get their car into their pit box and stopped so the crew can do the service.
Yes, indeed. These Indy cars with their racing brakes are hard to stop in pit lane at the best of times. So Dance up on the jacks. There's Skurlock making his way into the final sector, and Cam is already away and back out onto the circuit.
Yeah, perfect stop, very quick. These cars fuel very quickly. They've got crews that can change all the tires very quickly as well. Not like the, sometimes 1 minute pit stops we see in GT racing. Just 8 seconds all it takes for Cam Dance to get a new set of tires on and put in about half a tank of fuel to get him to the end.
Yeah, and he's been able to maintain the lead there, even in the midst of all that. So a great run from Mr. Dance, and making his way through the opening section of the lap, demonstrating again. That's our second place man, Skurlock. That just goes to show you the difference. There's, I'd say, over a third of a lap difference between these guys.
Yeah, we're talking about a 75, 74 second lap, and the lead that Dance has 31 seconds, so nearly half a lap at this point. Right. And he's certainly got the time to do that as well. It's a pretty quick lap in cars like these. It really is at only about 75 seconds.
Yeah, it's a rapid place, this Belle Isle circuit, and it can turn around and bite you at any time. Purnell, one of the more troubled drivers in the field, unfortunately for him. Bowen is chasing him down with a car that's looking a little bit healthier.
Yeah, once again, it's the second stint repeats the first. He's just carrying that damage, is Chris Purnell, and just hoping that no one else has enough time to catch him. But Shane Bowen definitely will. That car will turn nicer, brake nicer, and probably be quite a bit more aerodynamically efficient at the high speeds as well. Once you bend any of the front or rear wings and they're at a jaunty sort of angle, really costs you your speed up at 6th gear.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't spend much time in top gear, at top speed around a place like this, but it does make a huge effect. And Bowen facing a bit of drama here from traffic. It was an awkward spot for him to come up to Raul Alvarez.
Yeah, indeed, that driver doing everything they can to be polite, but the difference between a slow car and a fast car being so huge, someone's in the wall there. Who is that?
Oh,
Trevor Mack. And with the nose up against the Armco, that had to be a crane and a tow to get that car out of there. So that's very unfortunate for him. Just out of the double right-hander, so we'll see what happened there for him in this Motum simulation replay.
Yeah, we got the acceleration right, but coming through this double apex, maybe a slight bit of aero instability. Oh, goodness me. Just coming over the crown on the road, it got unsettled. Wedged up on the wall. That's him done.
Yeah, bit of oversteer, steers into the skid, snaps back the other way. Heavy impact on the left wall and the right wall. Unfortunate for Trevor Mack, and clearly done so well because we are within 10 laps to go in race 1.
Yeah, this race has just flown by, hasn't it? Cameron Dance coming around his 26th lap. But the battle for 4th and 5th, once again, it's been filled by different drivers all through the race. But it's always been the position that provides some of the most action. So Purnell now is in a position where he's chasing down Sheridan, and he's having to take an awful lot of curb there just to maintain some semblance of a smooth line through the corner. Missing half the front wing is not going to help him.
No, but I think I see a little tweak to the front right of the wing for Alexander Sheridan. So neither of these perfect cars. I could be wrong on that one, though. Purnell has clearly found how much grip he has got, and last 2 laps he's taken a couple tenths out of Sheridan.
Yeah, he certainly has. So we also have to remember as well where these guys qualified, because Sheridan started 16th, Purnell started 6th. So in terms of 1 lap pace, Purnell obviously has the advantage here. Both of them hobbled. That is street racing and single-seaters, isn't it?
Yeah, naturally, it's just so hit and miss whether you've got the car working right or not. The window of performance is very, very wide compared to if it was something that a lot of people know, like, and understand, like GTEs at Spa, for example. We'd see a lot of very, very evenly matched drivers and teams there, but this, it's just such a challenge that the difference between the guys who've got it figured out and the guys who don't quite, it is, 3 seconds a lap.
Yeah, and that's the nature of these super fast cars in any category, real life or sim. The faster a car gets, generally, the harder it is to get it into that optimal window of operating. We're still taking a look at this 4th and 5th place battle, because you can see through the lower downforce parts of the circuit, Purnell is really gaining.
Yeah, must have suspension settings that favor him, must be doing well getting the power down. Obviously, through the faster stuff, Sheridan looks like he's got a car that would be producing slightly better downforce. We can talk all we like about, how they look. It's obvious that Purnell is closing this gap over the last couple of laps. The numbers cannot lie.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're both getting reasonable exits out of the hairpin. As in the background there, that's Shane Bowen having yielded by Ryan DeCartier-McCarthy. Oh, Purnell getting very close to the wall through those last few corners. This is a great onboard shot. You can see the bump right there at the exit of turn 1. You do not want to spin up the rear tyres over that thing, because you will be gone.
Yeah, you can see from this onboard the gears that Chris Purnell is using. He's got to be so careful when that car is in 1st gear. We saw coming down the straight that it was a long way down the straight before he engaged 6th gear. I think that shows he's missing a bit of the straight line speed. Get a great opportunity here down the strand, though. He takes that one in 2nd gear. We haven't seen many drivers spinning up the rears out of there. I think once you're in 2nd gear, the car can manage it a little bit. Look, he's to the Corvette bridge before the car says you should shift into 6th gear. Clearly missing a lot of straight line speed, but through this slow stuff, through the fountain section, through these parts of the track, Purnell clearly has got it figured out.
Yeah, you can see how aggressively he turns in as well. He's almost scrubbing the rear, the front tires slightly, but that's all working out to extra heat build-up and extra grip. He can afford to push these tires a little bit more now that they are a bit fresher. But 1 lap around Belle Isle in an Indy car, certainly one heck of an experience. And Purnell doing it Fernando Alonso circa mid-2000s style, just shoving the car into the corners and making it stick.
One of the things we haven't really talked about, I briefly mentioned on it that at one point Michael Skurlock was the driver who was the highest up of the cars that had pitted, and Robert Northway was running in 2nd. Well, now that Northway's made his pit stop, so we watch our leader dance with the traffic, he's got to be so careful around that, because it's such a lead he has to lose. Skurlock in 2nd after taking a much earlier pit stop than Robert Northway, who'd stayed out.
Yeah, certainly. That's interesting observation. 2/10 slower of a stop did Skurlock take, and Northway, he's running reasonably, but still a very long way behind.
And of course, that was our top 3, but it's just behind them in the standings that is this battle Sheridan and Purnell, and Sheridan, I think, with the better car, but Purnell driving clearly far beyond the level of that somewhat damaged car. I think if this is a very strong drive from Chris Purnell, even if the times aren't showing it. That is what I would suggest.
Absolutely, and I would agree with you. Sheridan, you can see he does have the straight line advantage down that stretch up to turn 3, but watch how Purnell regains through this section. Obviously got a lot more mechanical grip dialed into the setup. Oh, what on earth happened there? Just a big loss of front end grip right in the middle of a corner. Did the car bottom out?
I think he was scared by Riley Curtis, who just had an incident. We'll have a replay of that one, and that car only just got towed out of the way before he came through. It's just in the front of this shot. Riley Curtis is then stuck in the wall, and there's a puff of smoke as he gets magicked to the pit lane realm, I think. So this is looking now at Riley Curtis, who was nursing a damaged car, no front wing. Car just plows wide, and then gives some love to the sponsor of that corner.
Yeah, taking the front end of the car at least back to the 1960s where they didn't have wings. Unfortunately, that results in a car that does not like steering. So, unfortunate for Riley Curtis. Purnell and Sheridan continuing to trade lap times, and Purnell's actually, due to that, dropped off. Yet more work to be done, and right behind them is the leader. There's still 9 cars on the lead lap.
Yeah, and of course what we saw there for Riley Curtis was that there's no weight over the front wheels in a car like this. It's all the aerodynamic force of the big front wing. When you lose the front wing, there's just nothing putting those front tires onto the ground, and just did not want to turn even at what looked like relatively slow speeds.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, once again, Danson Skurlock leading the way, and Matt Clote making his way. And Leslie, he's had a bit of a quiet one compared to most other drivers in this race. He's held on very nicely, lost one position from his starting, but at the same time, it's been a reasonable effort. Oh, that's a spinner in the background. Who's that? Oh no, Wayne Taylor with issues. Oh, he managed to get it back into the wall too.
Within the confines of the concrete barriers, we've seen a few people go around and then really struggle to get the car facing the correct way afterwards. And that's just another thing that's so difficult about this street circuit. There isn't room to do anything but a 3-point turn to get your nose facing in the direction of travel.
Yeah, particularly through that section where Leslie just went through. There's no runoff on the double right-hander, even though it's the kind of corner that usually you'd see a bit more runoff at. Well, here's Dwayne Burns chasing down Gavin Barber. These guys are under a second between them. Barber in that fluorescent yellow, and Dwayne Burns in the Avatar Auto Racing.
Last lap for Barber, a 1 minute 24, 9 seconds slower than Dwayne Burns behind, so it must have been a problem for Barber, and he might well be struggling, so Dwayne Burns senses an opportunity to pounce.
Yeah, he certainly does, and you got to think about places that you can put a move on someone around a place like this. You won't be able to, through those last couple of corners, fighting at the aero through those medium speed right-handers, but a bit more of a slipstream opportunity until the quick turns 1 and 2. You see Burns struggling with the front end of that car, trying to turn it in as early as possible, avoid the wall. We'll see how he does when he gets to the slower section.
Yeah, he did really struggle through the fast sweeping corners, and you need to get a good run out of turn 2 if you're going to pass into turn 3, and he just wasn't close enough. So he's obviously pretty well through here. What he needs is a good run onto the backstretch out of the right-hander up here, and hope that he'd saved up a push to pass. He's close. He's very close. That's a much better run than he got out of turn 2. Can he make an overtake here?
Yeah, well, it looks like he's got the run. He must have push to pass active there, and he's on the inside for the braking zone, but Barber holds on round the outside. almost a move into that section. You can see Barber struggling a bit with the front end now as well. I think that's what Burns is trying to take advantage of here. Burns just taking a more direct line to the apex of corners, and he's not able to hook up the throttle quite as well as Barber is.
And you almost need to wait out of those slow corners until you've completed the corner and got the steering wheel straight before you can mash the throttle in first gear. Tell you what, he's a lot closer into turn 1 this time. That'd be a brave move, and he thinks a lot better of it, but much closer through turn 2 this time than the lap before. Get a great little helicopter shot. Can he make a move into turn 3? He's closing, but not close enough when they get to the brakes. Or is he? No, not this time, but the pressure is on.
Yeah, you can see Barber overdriving the car into the corner to maintain some momentum at the apex, and that's what's allowing him to stay ahead of Burns through this section. You can see that Burns has much cleaner lines. He's actually carrying a lot more speed through the corners, but because Barber is able to carry that momentum, he just stays ahead. But this could be a move for sure. Will Barber be able to defend this one? Don't think so. Already gone by, and that's Dwayne Burns into 9th place. Oh, almost.
You're going to have a look at your race leader, though. He's on his last lap.
Yeah, certainly is. Cam Dance making his way through the penultimate section of the lap. And what a drive from this guy. It's a typical SimSpeed story. We barely show the guy because he's had such a good time up front. Cam Dance taking the checkered flag for race 1 of the duel in Detroit.
Delighted with himself. He'd be flashing his headlights if he could, but last minute disaster for Will Leslie, who's, I think, gone into the wall on effectively his last lap. That will cost him some positions, but if it's on the last lap, he can only lose 1 lap, and there are a few cars 1 or more laps down. So just as I said, don't see many people lighting up the rear tires coming onto the strand. Will Leslie proves me wrong, and quite late in the race too, but I think he might still hold on to 8th position just by virtue of being one of the last guys on the lead lap.
Yeah, seems that way. Very lenient race classification rules, so not much to lose there for Will Leslie, but he'll still be frustrated. It was a race that was filled with drama for many, and Robert Northway, one of the beneficiaries of all of that, a very strong drive to 3rd place, but Cam Dance, the big celebrator in all of this. Here are the unofficial results. Top 8 on your screen. Dance, Skurlock, Northway, your podium. Sheridan holding on to 4th. An excellent drive from 16th. Chris Purnell holding on with damage. Shane Bowen, another fantastic drive. 19th to 6th. 22nd to 7th for Matt Clote. And Will Leslie just holding on there to 8th place.
9th place, Dwayne Burns did get that move done on Gavin Barber to put Barber as the last car in the top 10. 11th place goes to John M. King. 12th place is Aldous Puteklis. Jamie Burnau 13th. Riley Curtis gets 14th despite being wedged into a wall at one point in the race. Tyron De Silva gets 15th, and 16th place is Ryan DeCartier McCarthy.
Scott Kukas held on for 17th place. Dave Douglas behind him. Wayne Taylor, another driver who faced a lot of dramas. Trevor Mack, Deltonac, Hunter, Giratz, and Thorpe, all drivers that had major issues. And that is the field rounded out by Stevens. Norton, your pole sitter. What will he be able to do in race 2? He'll have to make sure that he nails the qualifying session. But that's going to be it, at least for the next few minutes. We are still waiting for race 2 to go up and live, so do not go away. This is the Detroit Grand Prix, part of the international division of the Majors series on SimSpeed TV on the iRacing Esports Network. We'll be back very soon.
Growing up as a kid in Oklahoma, where I'm from, the Chili Bowl is the biggest race that we have. The Chili Bowl has kind of been my favorite race of the year. Growing up a dirt racer in Oklahoma, that's kind of the holy grail.
Fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's got everything outside of both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up top
Oh
here.
my God. Oh. Big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Section's very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh no.
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
Well, the first race of the duel in Detroit, the Indy Grand Prix and the Majors Series, has been run and won. We're getting ready for race 2 to kick off. There's going to be a 10-minute qualifying session after this practice session is over, and then we're going for another 35 laps in much hotter conditions, 41 degrees out on track at the moment. Welcome if you've just joined us. I'm Reese Gardner. Alongside me, David Haynes. This is SimSpeed TV on the iRacing Esports Network. We've got our Race 1 winner in with us in the commentary box at the moment. Cam Dance, thanks for joining us. Looked pretty calm out there for you, but what was it like from behind the wheel?
Yeah, it was a little bit not too bad, actually, once I'd managed to get past Norton, and after pretty much what I saw in the mirrors was an absolute cluster of cars just going everywhere. I just knew that it was pretty much just keep it clean and consistent the rest of the way, and that's all I needed to do. I mean, going into this race and looking at what practice was, it was all going to be about keeping it out of the concrete, so did it in the end. Wasn't the quickest on paper, although I did set the fastest lap, but mainly due to having fresher tyres and a bit of fun with push to pass. But Norton seems to be quite quick and on paper anyway, so we'll have to see how this race goes. Again, if we can keep it out of the concrete, it should be fine.
In terms of the push to pass, what was your strategy with that? Did you save it all up for the end, or did you go for those fast laps early?
I just saved it for pretty much the entire race. There was no point using it because of the gaps that I had to the guys behind. So it wasn't really necessarily going to be a major having to use it. Obviously, I did have a strategy in my mind of what I was going to do if Norton was didn't get involved in what happened on lap 1. So, but yeah, it's just going to be survival of the fittest, really.
And finally, the track conditions markedly different to what we had in the first race. We're thinking that the conditions in race 1 caught a lot of drivers out. A, do you think that's true? B, how are these conditions going to fare, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the conditions of race 1 were actually quite interesting. Obviously, you had quite a crosswind going towards the city, so you were pretty much sort of drifting through some of the straights and also getting a bit of push and oversteer through other corners. So it was really, really interesting. But the cold conditions didn't really have too much of an impact. It made it a little bit easier to drive. But obviously, with these hotter conditions, it's going to be definitely a much bigger challenge. Obviously, not so much wind, so it's not going to be so bad. But yeah, it's just going to be a matter of being consistent like we did in the first race.
Hope to have another chat with you soon, Cam. Thank you very much for joining us.
No worries.
That was Cam Dance from TTL Esports Race 1 winner. Well, we've got a few minutes left until the qualifying session kicks off, David. Christopher Norton once again at the top of the timesheets, a 13.6. We'll see what Dance can do to match that.
Yeah, indeed. Certainly there is not only a big gulf in the times of quick guys versus slow guys, but a big gulf between people who can put in one quick lap and people who can keep it out of the wall for 35 laps. I think that's what a couple drivers need to improve on, not a single lap pace. Certainly qualifying here, only a couple more opportunities here. You see that clock ticking down there. So Norton up top right now, but going to need to be clean in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some beautiful shots from on top of the concrete walls that line this circuit. You can see the speeds that the drivers are actually dealing with around a place like this. It is very much in the form of Formula One at Monaco. Yes, it's not as glamorous, but definitely the challenge is right up there.
Yeah, Monaco has very expensive yachts in the harbour, and we've got freight ships and coal freighters going past on the river here. So slight difference there, but both of them by the water, and a similar strategy required to just survive.
Yeah, exactly. So, final minute of the session, looking through those gaps. Dwayne Burns running a time very similar to Mr. Norton. So, the qualifying session should be interesting. They have 4 laps and 10 minutes in which to complete them. So, we will have to wait and see. And you see the flags blowing a fair bit as well in the wind. It's another windy day, 21-kilometer-an-hour wind going west. So I think that translates into a slight tailwind down the backstretch.
Yes, I think so as well. It means it'll be a little bit of a breeze in their face in the braking zone for turn 3, which means that should be very effective on the brakes in that particular overtaking opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And you see the way the wind speed is changing there. It was at 21 kph when I said it, but you see how it drops down and fluctuates. So that's something the drivers are going to have to watch out for, as they did in race 1. Either way, qualifying is go. And those, once again, the strategy attributes we're working with, same race length as the first race here. But it's all about qualifying performance now.
Yeah, exactly. Small fuel loads now, big fuel tanks later on in the race. So, obviously, warming up the tyres is going to be very critical.
Yes, indeed. And this is an independent qualifying session for all the drivers. It's just them on the track. They're all lapping at the same time, but they can't see each other. So a little bit more of an opportunity to get the fastest lap possible. Trevor Mack has not had the best run in this event. One of the drivers who was caught up in the major dramas that many suffered. Let's hope he can do better here.
Yeah, caught up in the majors dramas.
Very funny. Very, very, very funny. This is my I got nothing, David. Keep going.
If I've disappointed you, I'm very, very sorry. But riding on board here with Christopher Norton, very rapid, and watching the wheel work is a delight. You can also see his shift lights and his gears there as well. So getting into 6th gear underneath the Corvette bridge. This looks quick. I think he knows exactly what he needs to do on this lap. And you can see just when the power goes down, the body language of the car, he needs to correct it just a little bit, but not too much. The car is very, very lively, and that's great to watch, but probably rather hair-raising at these speeds if you're on board. And look, just like Monaco, he moves off what you'd think is the racing line to avoid the worst of the bumps, like between Casino and Massenet. He's doing that between the exit of the fountain section and towards the fast right-handers. And he will cross the line. Was that a flying lap or an out lap there? Flying lap. We see it was a 1 minute 54, I think, so that would be an out lap.
Yeah, so this is Christopher Norton's actual hot lap here, and you saw he did go a bit wide in turn 1 and really wrestling with the car on the exit of turn 3 there, and I absolutely love this section. You crisscross back through a bunch of right angle turns. There's a slight bit of elevation change and bumps that set the car sometimes completely airborne, and then you've got this long stretch, slightly curved down the back of the circuit, and then one of the more optimistic overtaking opportunities right here.
Exactly, a little bit of a curved braking zone as well, but he gets that good, and this is still looking like a quick lap despite the issues in turn 3. So Christopher Norton is on it, and you can see how quick that is when he's got it all set up. That out lap when we were looking at him, I think he did a good job then of warming up the tyres. So he had them moving this way, moving that way, going quick, getting the heat into them. Got very close to that wall, but I think he just got away with it. We'll see if this is a valid lap for Christopher Norton as he crosses the stripe just there. And he goes to the top, 1 minute 13.185, more than I think a second quicker than the fastest lap in the race we just saw. You can look at the timing tower and see how far proud of the rest of the field Christopher Norton is right now. What can this man Cam Dance do about it? I think when he spoke with you, he was humbled by the 1 lap speed of Christopher Norton, just hoping that he can put a clean race together. Let's see what he can do for qualifying. Oh my goodness, how close do you want it?
How close do you want it indeed? 0.018 of a second between our top two. Those are the kinds of gaps we want. Fantastic to see, and Norton is still not done yet. Remember, these tyres just keep getting hotter and stickier every single lap in this session, so Christopher Norton staying out and trying his best to eke as much pace out of this thing as possible, just letting the car wriggle on the exit of that acceleration zone. One of the coolest places to watch cars from around this place. Now it's just a flat-out blast to the finish line. What can he do? Incredibly close. Could it be a 112? It is. 112.804 for Christopher Norton, and that puts him up to the pole again. Dance is going to have to respond.
So Norton then ran very wide through turns 1 and 2, so he's aborted any attempt at another lap on that run, watching Skurlock, who's currently got 3rd place. But with the 4 flying laps they're allowed, I'm seeing Norton and Dancers both going to take a second stab at it with a fresh set of tyres.
Yes, indeed, and that's the kind of thing that you'd want, I think, in these circumstances. The track conditions being 41 degrees Celsius as they are, it's probably beneficial to preserve a set of tyres and just make sure that you've got fresh ones. What can Robert Northway do, meanwhile? 3rd place finisher in race 1, so he's certainly got the ability to stay out of trouble, but how can he go around 1 lap of this place?
Yeah, indeed. So onto the backstretch he goes. 2nd gear revs all the way up. He's got that advanced frontal protection device in front of him that is new on iRacing to the IndyCar, like it is in real life for this season. Got mighty close to the wall there, and that device, for the safety of the real-world drivers, a little bit of an annoyance to some of the sim drivers, as it is right in the center of their vision. But you notice that more on a computer monitor than you do were you actually sitting in one of the cars, because you've got 2 eyes.
Yeah, exactly. There's something that that not a lot of people consider about sim racing, the way that the screen translates that information to you. It's part of the reason why VR is becoming as much of a force as it is. But Northway carrying a bit of damage on his front wing, I think picking it up halfway around that last lap he did, so he's going to have to get that repaired. Meanwhile, Norton having another stab at improving his pole position on an outlap. So we'll take a look at what Daniel Stevens can do in car 66.
Another driver not yet with a time on the board, and that tweak to the front wing suggests that maybe one of the laps wasn't valid because of that. So he will carry on and try and set a lap this time.
Absolutely. A 15.3 on the board for Daniel Stevens there, putting him 12th. So Cameron Dance taking a bit of a shortcut in the back half of the circuit, gearing himself up for one final stab. This is his third qualifying lap, so this next one that he does is going to be his last opportunity to nab pole.
Yeah, an interesting thing about the strategy they're trying is that you get 4 flying laps and they get a free out lap, but then after you tow the car in the middle of your 4 flying laps, you have to use one of your flying laps as an out lap. So in essence, you get a free flying lap, free out lap, into the wall, huge hit. He was clearly pushing that so hard.
Oh my goodness. That made me physically wince. That was a crazy hit. Let's have a look at it from on board. Coming through turns 1 and 2, you can see Dance really pushing it, but then just over the bump, losing the rear into the wall, just drags him. So Dance is definitely not going to be on pole.
Yeah, I think that takes away all opportunity he had to try and improve and play deal with the walls. Sometimes they're going to bite, and that's happened. He knew that he needed 0.3 more on his lap to improve and take pole back, and that means taking every risk, and that's, I think, what he's done.
Meanwhile, we take a look at Uldis Puteklis, currently sitting in 4th place, carrying some damage. He's had a good run in this session. The hot conditions seem to suit him. And this is his final opportunity to set a time. So with the hot conditions taking some other drivers out of contention, this is a really good opportunity for Puteklis to improve. He hasn't had the most spotless run in this particular season.
No, and I think what we just saw him on there was an outlap. He's your current pole sitter, Christopher Norton. If he can improve on a 1 minute 12.8, my goodness, he'll deserve it.
He can.
And
Yep.
he can. Wow, that is dominant and lets everyone else know what he's about.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a big confidence boost for him coming into the race as well, because he'll have control of the start. He'll be able to try and stay out of trouble. Northway making friends with the walls, and we're just looking for drivers who are trying desperately to finish their laps. Riley Curtis with one of the striking liveries on this grid. I think that might be an in-lap, and Northway, well, he's transformed his friendship with the walls into a full-blown relationship.
Yeah, he'll have to hopefully sever with that for the race. And this is what the grid's going to look like for that.
Yes, indeed. Christopher Norton takes pole by over half a second from Cam Dance. Burns and Puteklis on row 2. Skurlock, Purnell, Gerards, and De Silva completing the top 8. Good run from Tyrone.
Will Leslie has 9th. 10th alongside him is going to be Mirko Dortanack. 11th is Robert Northway. Had a good run in race 1. Alongside him is Matthew Klurt. Then 13th is Trevor Mack. 14th, Daniel Stevens. 15th is Jamie Burnow. And joining his row is Shane Bowen.
Alexander Sheridan starts back in the field in 17th. Barber and Taylor join him as well. Eric Thorpe rounding out the top 20, while Clark, Douglas, DeCartier, McCarthy, and King rounding out the top 24.
We have lost one driver since race 1, and I can't quite place who it is. We're going to have 27 cars for this race, though, as we've got Matt Hunter in 25th, Riley Curtis 26th, and Scott Kukas has 27th, and his own row of the grid all to himself.
Yeah, well, he's going to have a front row seat to some of the action that we'll undoubtedly see on this first lap. Drivers are going to have to be a bit more careful. These hotter conditions result in a quicker loss of grip for the front tires, so this is going to be all about driving within the limits, even more so than race 1.
Exactly, and the rules for this race all exactly the same. 35 minutes, same as race 1. Sorry, 35 laps, same as race 1. Pit stop going to be required. Every driver has 10 push-to-passes to use when they choose to, and that will... we heard from Cam what he thought about that, and every other driver will have their own strategy for deploying those.
Yep, exactly. Well, the 2 minutes of gridding time are up, and the pace car should start moving away any second now. And of course, the drivers lining up in sim on this short straight leading up to the penultimate corners. So getting up to speed, a little bit of weaving for the drivers as well. They want to get the tires up to temperature. The iRacing Roof First safety car is going to pull into the pits. Away he goes, and Norton chooses when to put the hammer down. And away he goes. But Dance actually got a jump on him. I don't know if that's going to be allowed, whether or not the automated penalty system is going to change that. But everyone taking it through turn 1, and Mirko Dortanak, Robert Northway, Matt Clote, all involved in a big, huge smash.
Not quite as bad as we saw in race 1, but certainly 4 or so cars involved there. Oh, and more further around. That's the exit of turn 3. Aldous Protectless, you were saying he's had a difficult season. Well, it looks like that's continued. And for the race lead, this is live pictures. Christopher Norton gets back in front of Cam Dance. Cameron Dance not giving it up just yet. But Norton's 1 lap pace certainly far superior. It's over this race distance. Cameron Dance is going to have to work out something to try and take another win.
Exactly right. We're getting another modem simulation replay of another incident that happened further back. It was the aftermath of what happened on the first lap. This is from Protectless's perspective, just catching and tapping around one of, that's either Burns or Bowen there. So that's a real shame for those guys. You can see just how tight it is in the starting area at Belle Isle on this replay.
Yeah, indeed. So we're going to see what happened to Dortanak. I think it was Northway got out of shape over the crest first. And of course, as you said, there's not a whole lot of space to be able to try and save that when you're in the middle of the pack. Really going to look on board with Northway. He's on the outside, and rear gets loose, and he goes into that Illusions Motorsport car. And of course, when there's 2 cars sideways in turn 2, everyone behind only has so much notice of that incident, and unfortunately more get involved.
Yes, indeed. Brett Gerards finds himself fighting up around position 7, and Jamie Burnau just ahead of him. These guys are ones that we didn't see too much of in the first race, so these hotter conditions obviously suiting them.
And that track, 42 degrees Celsius right now. The wind's slightly more subdued, but still noticeable compared to race 1. And I don't know, does the hot weather mean that the rear tyres don't actually snap as bad? Sometimes when you've got a lot of grip, it's catastrophic when the tyres do break loose, because it's such a fine knife edge when you've got a lot of grip. Here, there'll be a little bit less grip. Maybe it's more predictable.
Perhaps. We'll have to wait and see, observe car behavior. Meanwhile, we are hearing word that Cam... Oh, dear. Oh, goodness. What happened there? That's Chris Purnell. That's for 3rd and 4th. Exit of turn 3. That's dangerous. Eric Thorpe involved in that too. What on earth happened there? We've got some more news, but it'll have to wait.
Yeah, looking at that, Eric Thorpe, I don't think took the start of the race. I think he started from the pit lane. So obviously he was down in some spots, about to go a lap down to Purnell, I do believe. So if you're Purnell running on the podium spots, and it's the mistake of someone who didn't even take the green flag, that you think you're in this situation, you'll be quite upset with that. If Purnell was, I'd believe it.
Well, either way, Cameron Dance, we've had some dramas for him. That's the news that I alluded to. He had a spin. Not only that, he's probably been given a black flag for being ahead of Norton at the start. Of course, you're not allowed to overtake before the start-finish line on safety car starts.
Yeah, indeed. Some slightly different rules prevail. So sometimes it's you can overtake them before the start-finish line if the green flag has already been waved. Sometimes it's you just can't pass the leader before the start-finish line, no matter when they decide to jump with the green flag. And we do have more reason to believe that Cam Dance might need to make a stop and hold penalty.
So that's a big shame for him, but these guys are having the time of their lives out there. 4th, 5th, and 6th on screen at the moment, and these guys have really been getting together. Leslie, Bernal, and Gerards.
Bernal from 15th on the grid, 4 laps in, now in the top 5.
That's
what
impressive.
An effort there. Yeah, indeed. Certainly, chaos has prevailed, and Purnell with some issues. Dance, we think, might need a penalty to be served soon, and obviously we saw those several incidents on the first lap, not the least was Northway and Dortmund, but through all of that, for Bernal to now be running in 5th from 15th in the race, from 15th on the grid, my mistake there.
Oh, good, and he's running consistently as well, which is good to see. He's keeping pace with the likes of Leslie and Gerards, and it seems pretty even between all three of them. This is the kind of driving that you need to be employing in this early stage of the race. Just get into that rhythm. Try and stay out of trouble. That's the name of the game around Belle Isle.
And I don't think we've seen many races at this sort of level of sim racing where the one-lap pace in qualifying so drastically doesn't convert to race pace. I mean, look at this. Bernal is thinking about 4th place, and clearly with 4 laps of qualifying, couldn't manage a top 10, and now he's thinking, yeah, a podium might be possible. How long is the penalty for Cam Dance? You know, like, suddenly, in the race conditions, Bernal has absolutely got it.
And we've just received word that there was no penalty for Cam Dance, so our reasoning was wrong. We accept that, but nonetheless, he still had a spin, so he's on the back foot. Meanwhile, this battle is really heating up near the end of the lap. Bernal falling into the clutches of Gerards here, and Leslie making a few slight errors himself. All these drivers in control of these super fast racing machines. Have a look at the draft down the front stretch. That's fantastic. But the way the lines differ through that opening section, oh, so close to the wall was Brett Gerards. This is a proper battle now. Bernal having to go defensive, leaving just enough room on the outside. This is racing, man. I love this.
This is what we really wanted to see in race 1. Getting it now. 3 guys very, very closely matched. Battles behind them as well as this Bowen and Wayne Taylor. I think Shane Bowen has just come through on Wayne Taylor, and this is right behind in position 7th and 8th. Behind this battle, we're looking at 4th, 5th, and 6th, where Jamie Bernal is the meat in an IndyCar sandwich, and he's looking for a way past Will Leslie, but Brett Gerards behind is trying to get a move on him. 3 IndyCars in 3 IndyCar lengths right there through the fountain section.
Absolutely fantastic racing through that section. And you can see that Leslie's hooking up the drive out of that hairpin a little bit better. But when it comes to the faster corners, a little bit of a bump. Gerard's in the wall behind him. Only slightly, though. Through all of this, Bernal is just sitting there, probably gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles.
Yeah, no doubt. So Leslie and Gerard's both having a very tough time through the double right-handers, and it's not stopping Gerard's. He's trying to put the move on Jamie Burnau. Going to have to go around the outside. Not sure that'll work so well here. Burnau does make the corner. Gerard's lights up those rear tires. It's the front grip he should be missing, but it's the rear grip that he was really looking for at that time.
Yeah, exactly. That little nick of the wall that he did on the last lap is going to cost him a little bit of stability in the long run. And Burnau, it looks like, had a slight appointment with the wall as well. Of course, it's not doing much to their pace or raceability, but it's all little chinks in the armor that form around a place like this. They are still line astern through the fountain section. And have a look at Burnau here. He gets a much better run out of that acceleration zone and is very aggressive on the front end through the section where he slows down. But Leslie is building up all of that momentum for when he exits it, and that's where his strength is.
Burnau a bit wide through both of the right-handers. Gerard's right there. And this is exactly the kind of opportunity where the gamesmanship about using the push to passes comes in. How many does Burnau have left? He can't afford to use them every lap to try and defend. When does Gerard's use them to try and overtake? Now would be a great opportunity. And once again, Burnau is going to defend the inside. And this time, I think he realizes the job is done.
Yeah, well, Brett Gerards looks to be on an absolute charge right now. You can see they're basically swapped places and not lost any time to Will Leslie up ahead. And you can see Gerards much more aggressive on the fronts now. He knows what he can do. He knows that he has pace. Can he convert one position gain into two on this lap?
Probably got a slightly better run than Will Leslie, but wasn't close enough. And Jamie Burnau sort of at the back of the train here, maybe nursing a tiny bit of damage. We'll see. Leslie, cork in the bottle, still in fourth position. And I think we've had a much cleaner first 8 or 9 laps of this race than we had of race 1. And that's fantastic to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been awesome to see this level of clean competition in race 2 here at Belle Isle. Unfortunately, Scott Kukas has not been able to turn around his luck from race 1. Let's have a look at what happened to him thanks to Modem Simulation on the run up to turn 3. Oh dear. I don't know if that was a miscommunication or an unexpected incident.
Kukas might have lost sight of his braking zone. Well, look, this is how Will Leslie lost that position to Brett Gerards. That's not a place we've seen many overtaking moves at all.
Yeah, he must have gotten a super good run out of the penultimate corner, did Brett. Maybe used a push to pass too. Well, now Leslie has to get back into the rhythm after being passed, and he's starting to get pressured by Mr. Burnau again.
Burnau right underneath the rear wing, slightly defensive line down towards the braking zone. Will Leslie has not let Jamie Burnau through this time. Jamie Burnau might need to get through sooner rather than later, because otherwise Brett Gerards will well and truly skip off into the distance. If it takes a few laps for Burnau to get the move done. He got very close underneath the rear wing of Will Leslie that time, but that was not an overtaking opportunity. He'll need to set up a good run out of either the final corner out of 2 or onto the back straight, because being quick through the fountain section is no good in cars like these. You cannot pass there.
No, absolutely not, and which is tragic for Jamie, because he you could see he had much cleaner lines. He was staying off the curbs. He was using the mechanical grip to his advantage. Leslie is bumping off curbs and being aggressive with turn-ins, so there's not much that Burnau can do in the midst of all of that. Here's the battle for the last couple positions in the top 10, Barber versus Sheridan, and Sheridan was ahead of Barber, I believe, before, but is being chased down by Roy Clark. And that's an interesting one. Barber just had a spin. Meanwhile, Burnau losing a slight bit of time to Leslie there.
Yeah, indeed. We're looking at shortly opening the pit window where drivers would be able to fuel and get to the end as well. So we might see some drivers try that, especially if they're tucked up behind a driver they can't pass. It worked out pretty well for our second place man in race 1. That was the name's escaping me here, but there's an
Skurlock.
early pit stop from Skurlock, correct. And then managed to find, some room on the track to put in some quick laps. And then once everyone else pitted, hey, he had second place. So for someone like Jamie Burnow or Roy Clark, some of these guys, it's not impossible to pit early and then make that strategy work.
Yeah, precisely. There's an awful lot of gamesmanship in the strategy in this sort of format at this sort of track. Well, now, I was just about to say now that things have settled down, but look at this, Roy Clark having a little bit of an issue. I believe this might be the crown in the road that we've seen so much action from. Oh, goodness me, big light up at the rears. Good thing it happened right near the pits.
Yeah, pit entry located very, very conveniently out of that corner, but not how you want to run your race doing that kind of thing. That is a tough corner, that long right-hander, because you're accelerating from second gear through third gear to fourth, trying to get a good run along. It doesn't always work. Great battle, Sheridan and Trevor Mack and Gavin Barber involved here as well. Coming down the back straight, Sheridan, I think, loses another spot, nursing that damage on the front wing. That'll be hurting him in a straight line. You see it looks like a little bit of a parachute there in front of the front left tyre.
Yeah, exactly. And Mirko Dortanak here right behind him is another one of the guys struggling to make something of this event. Started in the top 10 and now running 21st, a lap down. But Norton is following Cam Dancer's lead from race 1 and driving a very controlled and reserved race up there in the lead. He now has the lead by almost 15 seconds.
Yes, a great pace for Christopher Norton now that he's had a good start. See a couple more drivers on the pit road right now. Scott Kukas, one of them. Sheridan now under pressure from Dwayne Burns. So Barber's gotten through, Mack has gotten through, and now Dwayne Burns is looking at trying to put a move somewhere on Alexander Sheridan. And you imagine if it's the straight line speed that's the problem for that number 24 car in front, then a good run out of the next corner here for Dwayne Burns will be all he needs. Can he get it done this time?
Looks like Sheridan was just able to hook up the exit better, slightly different gear ratios, but you can see a big, huge slipstream from Dwayne Burns, maybe using push to pass there to great effect. And Dortanak just washing out on exit, but Burns through into 12th position. Let's see what he can do from here. It's a long road to try and reclaim a podium position.
Indeed, couple more cars on pit lane right now as well. Motive simulation replay here of why Ryan DeCartia McCarthy is one of those drivers currently in pit lane right now. Through turn 1 and 2, he's done quite a few flips. Is this going to be the exit of turn 2? Yep, over that crest. Rear starts to slide heavy into the wall.
That's a real shame for him running in the top 10 at the time. So another missed opportunity. A lot of frustrated drivers, I think, in this event so far. So Ryan DeCartier McCarthy nursing wounds, and Sheridan with issues as well, apparently. Let's have a look at what happened to him here. It would have happened almost at the start of the lap.
So the car behind is Mirko Dortanak, who we know had those problems on lap 1. And then car coming out of the pits. So Sheridan's going slow, and Dortanak's front wing into the back of Alexander Sheridan sends him around. Now, obviously Sheridan was going a little bit slowly on the racing line here, but with good reason, because he's looking at that car coming out of the pit lane, and then Dortanak helps him around there.
Yeah, that's a real shame there for Sheridan. We've got to remember too that Dortanak, in terms of one lap pace, had the measure, and we're getting news that Dortanak is out as well. And there's the reason why, into the tarmac runoff area, and well, that's day done for him.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's
a race of attrition.
Hotel room, but certainly that was an attempt at retiring the car for sure, going down the escape road there. So we look at 9th and 10th, Barber and Burns. Burns on a charge because he got past Sheridan. Now he gets past Barber. So Dwayne Burns lighting up the timing screen. Obviously a great qualifying for him. Poor race start. Now he's climbing back up the order. That looks like Kukas around.
Yeah, Kukas not having the best of runs here today, and he's just pulled off the track. I don't know if he's going to try and turn that thing around. It looks like he is, just looking for a gap. Well, meanwhile, the battle for the podium, this is one we're going to have to start taking a look at, because De Silva versus Gerards looks like to be the next battle that will eventuate. Bit of lap traffic here in the form of Robert Northway. Another one of the drivers nursing a lot of injury to his race and dignity around this place. It's been a tough one for this field, but De Silva a 16.2 on the last lap. Gerards a 15.8 on the last lap. So this guy is on a massive charge.
Yeah, indeed, and we were watching him earlier in this race and some of the moves he made. So obviously, quick car, and when he gets there, Tyrone De Silva is going to have to be worried, because Gerards has made the pass on Will Leslie earlier in the race a lot quicker than the other drivers that were involved in that battle.
Yes, indeed. And as you see these drivers go through this section of the road, it's another fact about the Belle Isle circuit that makes it an especially interesting one. You notice that every turn has some kind of camber to it. It's all slightly banked a little bit, especially in terms of the crown of the road. You see how the cars have to almost climb over the middle section of the tarmac to go from one side to the other. And this is one of the things that Gerards has been taking advantage of, using that momentum, hurling himself forward into third place, onto the podium. Good move.
Yeah, I was worried he might be in too hot for a second there, but he got it done. Now onto a podium position is Brett Gerards. Well done to him. Around is someone there. Dave Douglas having a tough race. Does not interfere with that lead battle we were watching though.
No, and thank goodness for that. It's another story of heartbreak, I think, for those guys further down the field. Meanwhile, Burnout getting himself involved in an interesting situation once again, because he's chasing down Gavin Barber for a spot in the top 10.
Yep, exactly. So Barber going backwards a little bit lately. Don't see a lot of damage on that car. Maybe he just stayed out of trouble earlier on, and now some other drivers are catching him back up. And the most recent of them is going to be Jamie Burnau, who has already made one pit stop and might well be fueled to get to the end. So Burnau staying behind will cost him time to a driver who hasn't pitted yet. Brett Gerards, just as we were praising his run into the top 3, that is a very, very sick-looking car coming down pit lane.
It certainly is. I mean, thank goodness it happened in the pit window. Let's have a look at what happened. It was right near the end of the lap as well, so very fortunate for Brett. But, oh, goodness me, Burnau was very lucky not to get collected by him there.
De Silva it was, who had just gone and passed. There's a couple JP Simshed cars out there, or at least JP Simshed liveried cars. And one of them is Burnau and one of them is De Silva, I think.
Yes, indeed. It's, you see just how close De Silva got there to getting a fair whack. There was a bit of a tap, but he managed to get away with it. Gerards probably managed to salvage it too.
Not the most costly of mistakes, but not what he'd want to have done, having just fought so well into the top 3. Now finds himself coming back out in 8th, and he's behind Dwayne Burns in 7th. So from one battle through the pit lane and right back into another. And both of these guys have pitted, but Burns did it very, very early for some damage and is not fueled to get to the end, while Gerards would be fueled to get to the end from now. Two drivers on different strategies.
It'll be interesting to see how those strategies play out more towards the end. We've just passed the halfway point of racing distance, and the last drivers left to pit are... Oh no! Norton's around! Oh my goodness!
That's race lead. A lot of damage there on the front left of the car, but all the suspension looks straight. Here's the replay. I think he might just get away with that because he hasn't pitted yet. But what has he done in the braking zone through the fountain section? Must be somewhere else that mistake has occurred.
Slightly too aggressive on the throttle was Norton. Well, he had an enormous lead, so it was something that he could afford to make, but still, It's a mistake that you don't want clouding yourself. So Norton has taken that opportunity to go into the pits, touring his way through now. So Cameron Dance back into the lead. Good move by Norton to do that when he did, because a lot of extra time would have been lost otherwise.
So this isn't race over by any means for Christopher Norton, but what it does is hand an advantage to Cameron Dance in the lead of the race. And the battle for the win is absolutely on, as is this battle right here. We're looking at Dwayne Burns and Brett Gerards battling, but right in front of them as well is Trevor Mack in 6th. So the battles that we're getting in race 2, I think a lot more fascinating than we saw in race 1, where anytime two drivers got close to each other, it seemed like they were both the positive end of a magnet and they'd both go for a spin.
Yeah, exactly. Trevor Mack into the pits for the first time. The only drivers left to pit are Gavin Barber, Shane Bowen, Taronda Silva, and our race leader Cam Dance. So these two guys, this is one big fight. I've been looking forward to seeing how these guys stack up against each other. Haven't seen them directly race each other in a long time, and there's a great context for that.
While Burns has been through the pit lane, he's going to need to do so again because it was very early in the piece and he did not have enough fuel on board. So a lot of different strategies going on, especially when we saw as many spins as we had. Norton come out of the pit lane in 3rd place behind Taronda Silva, who is not letting him through. So while this happens, Cam Dance has free reign to try and extend his lead when they come towards the pit stops. Norton, what an aggressive move there, did not work out. He did not get that car to the inside, and he is clearly very frustrated here, but it's from his own mistake.
Yeah, visibly frustrated as Norton, trying to send him wide, but that's not the best place to do it. There's no runoff for the other driver to go into. Well, looks like on exit is where he's going to have to get it done, and he does pretty conclusively, I have to say.
Norton probably had some push-to-passes saved up. Silva had been involved in a couple more battles early on, whereas we know Norton had led from the front all race. Probably using a push-to-pass there. If you've got them, you'd be a fool not to use them in a situation like that when you're being held up so much.
Indeed. Well, that's the battle for second over and done with, I think, because you can see the gap he pulled. Meanwhile, 5th and 6th, Burns and Gerards, they're still together. Gerards may have brushed the wall just slightly a few corners ago, but they are both filling each other's head spaces pretty well.
Indeed, Gerards is looking at a top 5 here still, though, knowing that Burns will need to pit again at some point. It's currently 18 laps since he came in for some repairs. Here's a modem simulation replay looking at Matthew Cloet, who is not having a good race.
Oh, goodness me, that's an odd one. That might be a hardware issue. Just looks like either the brakes just locked up or the car just didn't want to turn. Oh. What on earth happened there? That's a very strange issue.
Yeah, having seen the onboard, offboard it really looked like, suspension failure, flat tire, technical problems, but having seen the onboard, it always looked like he did light up those tires and try and steer into it, and then realize he wasn't going to save it before the wall. But we have not seen an incident anything like that so far. Bizarre
Stuck
incident.
throttle, maybe.
Anything's possible.
Well, one thing that was very possible was Brett Gerards losing a bit of ground to Dwayne Burns, and that's exactly what's happened. We saw him run wide on the exit to the straight just then. So Burns is in a nice rhythm at the moment. I think he's just running his own race, trying his best to keep it out of the wall as per usual. Meanwhile, Gerards trying to push as hard as he can, nurse his way to that potential top 5.
Yeah, we rode on board with him a bit earlier and he was looking a little bit scruffy. Burns has pulled out a little bit more of a gap. And speaking about that, it's just about time Cam Dance should be pitting soon. He has a 23-second lead over Christopher Norton, who has pitted to get to the end. Pardon me, 28 seconds from pit in to pit out for Norton last time. So this is going to be very, very close. I'm picking Dance to come out of the pits maybe 2 seconds behind Christopher Norton. This is going to be super close, and this stop needs to be perfect for Cam Dance.
Absolutely does. Let's take a look at him as he negotiates this cramped pit lane at Belle Isle. One of the first pit stalls. He's got plenty of time to prepare for that big stop on the brakes. And there's Christopher Norton going through, and Cam Dance straight out. So you are right, David. It is just about 2 seconds, maybe a little more.
Yeah, in that ballpark. So Dance can see down the straight at Christopher Norton, and Dance weaving around a little bit, trying to warm up those new tyres he's just got on. Will Leslie maybe has made the tyres too warm. Let's look at the replay here of what he's done. That's at the end of the backstretch, just before the fountain section. He's gone to turn in, and no, he hasn't. He's probably locked up a tyre or come in too hot and realised that turning into the corner was going to mean he went into the barrier. So that's very heads up. Even though he has lost some time, he did keep it off the barriers there when he came in too hot on the brakes.
Yeah, and another corner with very sparing runoff. You can see Dance going through there at the moment. There is some runoff on entry, but everywhere else, you've only got the walls for company. So good presence of mind from him to try and just keep his car out of contact with that concrete and rubber. Dance, meanwhile, he's still waiting for these new tyres to come up to pressure, come up to temperature. They'll probably take another couple of corners before they're at full optimal condition, and then we'll see what kind of chunks of time he can take out of Christopher Norton.
Yeah, you see that gap on your screen right there, 2.5 seconds. Now, if the first half of the race is anything to be believed, when Norton puts the hammer down, he can extend that gap out. But then he did make unforced error.
Yeah, well, we've just received news from our director that Cam Dance's outlap was 2 seconds faster than Norton's outlap was. So you can tell Dance is right on it already. Can't wait to see how this battle turns out.
We saw between turns 2 and 3 on his outlap, Dance, weaving left, weaving right, down the straight, trying to get temperature into those tyres quick as he possibly can. Tyrone De Silva has just come through the pit lane, come out in 4th place, right behind Brett Giratz, who we know stopped a little bit early and is fueled to get to the end. So the battle for the last step on the podium, I think just as tightly contested as the battle for the win. It's all up for grabs.
Yeah, certainly is a fantastic race to cap off this night of proceedings in the International Majors Series. Jamie Burnau and Shane Bowen and Will Leslie going side by side through turn 3.
Yeah, Leslie trying to recover from losing, from missing one of those corners earlier, and Bowen has gone into the wall. This is a spot you don't see cars going side by side very often, especially not open wheel cars like that. There's often just not room for 2 cars through there. See the replay here, there is just one car width there. You really can't blame Shane Bowen for making a little bit of contact with the wall here.
Yeah, certainly, but credit to those guys for going side by side through turn 3. Haven't seen many people do that. This is what happened on the exit. Not much room. Bowen just ricocheting off the wall and into Leslie, but Leslie being a sporting driver and letting the position go.
And I tell you what, Bowen and Leslie fighting. Dwayne Burns is there as well.
Oh no, he's not.
What have I gone and done?
Oh, that's on you, David. Sorry.
100%. Look, sometimes the curse of the commentator is clear as day, and that was...
Oh, De Silva's around too. We'll have to take a look at that as well. But here's what happened to Burns. Leslie just up ahead, and Burns just went straight on. That's so bizarre. And De Silva suffering big understeer issues too. New tyres maybe not up to temp. Maybe the track temperature is overheating the front tyres. Such a frustrating run for these guys.
Burns on the lane, and you see he gets out of the car there. That looks like a retirement. De Silva going to try and nurse that damage from going quite hard nose first into the tyres. Obviously no suspension damage, but the front wing there is... all kinds of angles. It's a piece of modern art and not a piece of science or engineering anymore.
Yeah, certainly not. It's quite the well, I mean, the downforce that produces would probably be really good up until about 80 kilometers an hour. then it'd just be a drag device more than anything. De Silva's still managing to go around at a reasonable pace, though. Meanwhile, our leaders making their way through some lapped traffic. Norton and Dance both making their way past Wayne Taylor and John King in the back half of the track, as we're hearing De Silva losing quite a bit of ground on these guys. So,
When
wow.
he rode on board, he was hardly reaching 6th gear towards turn 3, missing a lot of straight line speed. We'll get another look at this, but typically you'd want to be just topping out 6th gear by the time you reach the braking zone. He's not doing that down the back stretch, and he was hardly doing it in towards turn 3 either.
Yeah, certainly. So that's the kind of challenge that Tyrrell is dealing with at the moment. Meanwhile, Jamie Burnau behind him, having an excellent run so far. Remember, this guy started in 15th. Now he's in the top 5. So it's been a great run from him.
Yeah, indeed. And we said maybe closing a second per lap on the driver in front. He's going to have 8 laps to go. So if he can keep that up, 5th place is possible for Jamie Burnau as well. He doesn't need to give up just yet. 2 seconds quick away here this time around. So De Silva trying to limp that damaged car home, but driver behind can see him. And I haven't had a close enough look. These two are teammates, yes?
Yeah, they're both running the JP Simshed liveries, so these guys trying to bring home a good result for the team.
4th and 5th, not bad at all. We're just waiting to see which driver is going to be 4th and which driver might be 5th. 6th place, Shane Bowens, maybe just a little bit too far down the road. De Silva is losing time, but he is still doing just enough that it's probably only Jamie Burnau who will be able to overtake.
A big issue for Dance. He's missing his front end. Oh, no. So Dance's luck has just absolutely flipped from race 1. Modem simulation replay. He had one of the cleanest cars in the field, but it looks like just getting together with some lap traffic. This is an awkward part of the circuit to come up on it too, and the driver in front of him just not willing to let him go. And Dance, well, I think that might have mostly been on him there, just losing the rear end and lighting it up a bit too much. Still, an incredibly awkward situation.
Yeah, a couple of corners in a row, he's trying to make his way through, and he's right up underneath the rear wing of the car in front. That is on him, no contact. He's lit up those rear tyres, nose first into the wall. Now he's going to come onto pit lane. I think he'll be able to get that fixed. I'm just wondering, will he be able to hold on to 2nd place? Because he actually might have built enough gap that Dance will maybe be able to hold on to 2nd place ahead of Brett Gerards, who's on a bit of an island in 3rd. And then behind them is this fantastic battle, 4th and 5th.
Well, Dance has just gone in and got a spare car. He's back out of the pits and onto the track again. He had another whoopsie moment in the second half of the lap, just understeered into the wall and the penultimate corners. But back out, and looks like he is still holding on to 2nd.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, obviously, the repairs are very, very quick. And we know that Norton and Dance, their speed is just seconds per lap ahead of the rest of the field around here. That he's built up just enough of a gap that he's comfortable in 2nd, but he's out of reach of trying to take the lead away. I think we'll give him just a little bit more patience and a little bit more time. He doesn't need to take any more risks to try and grab the race win. 2nd, he just needs to bring that home. Riding on board with De Silva and bunch of understeer into some of these corners. I think that front left not helping him through the corners as well as the straight lines. We also thought he was suffering. So De Silva and Burnau closer than ever, and it is 6 laps to go, maybe 5.5 for these guys.
Yeah, and the lap time difference between these guys is a 16.9 for Burnau and an 18.3 for De Silva, so a huge pace difference between those cars. And Tyrone De Silva's front wing basically looks like he's just strapped a frying pan to the front deck of that car. It's just holding it up in the wind. I can English.
Oh, has he understeered into the
He
wall
has.
once again? There he has. And he's taken that bit of front wing and he's knocked it off. And he's
Straight
going to have
into
to
the
come into
pits.
the pit lane because that is just no good. He might have well understeered into there pretty hard. Modem simulation replay, I think, will give us the answers to that. I just caught it out of the corner of my eye. Just there's a bump on the turn in there, and sometimes you can just unload the front tires, and when they load up again, they just understeer into the outside wall, and maybe that's what he's done there. So careful with the bumps around here.
Absolutely. Well, De Silva's just come back out of the pits now. He's got a spare car. Meanwhile, Trevor Mack and Will Leslie fighting for what is now 6th and 7th. And just trading positions there. Trevor Mack is his second half of the race has been really good. He's been able to make up those positions and maintain it. Oh man, we're not going to sing it. We'll probably get copyright striked. Meanwhile, Brett Gerards is closing in on Cameron Dance. It's less than 2 seconds between these guys, and Gerards, have a look at the way he pushes that thing.
Yeah, what on earth is going on for Dance? That gap has come down to nothing. Gerards is right here, right underneath. That gap's now down to about a second. What does Gerards have left for push-to-passes? What does Dance have left? We know he saved some earlier on, but he's probably been pushing hard, trying to close the gap. He's missing part of that new front wing again.
Yeah, Dance has been pushing really hard in
He's
this
obviously had another issue.
race.
He's going to lose this spot. He's just gone and lost 1 second in 2 corners there. That car does not want to turn for Dance at all. Not in the slightest. He's having a very tough last couple of laps here. We mentioned he came into the pit lane for a second time, get that car fixed up, and then in the 2.5 laps since that, he's knocked part of the front wing off again. Someone else is around there. And
Barber. Yeah, it's Gavin Barber. He's going to fall down the order again. He was one of the guys running well in the back half of the top 10. But now, Gerards clipping the wall. Nobody is safe from the concrete around here. And have a look at how much Dance is missing through turn 1. Half of the downforce at the front is gone for him. So this is the only chance Gerards is going to have. Dance is really going defensive here. Going to push it as far as he can. Gerards out on the marbles, but Dance unstable over the curb, and that's going to be second for Brett.
this is starting to fall apart for Dance. He's missing a bunch of speed, now back into 3rd place. Just needs to head down, careful, bring that thing home. He's got enough time backwards to finish in 3rd, but I didn't think he was going to lose 2nd, and now he has.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be that devastating for him in terms of the championship. His main rival, Jason Martin, is not present in this race, so it will be interesting to see what the gaps are like after this. Dance probably not in much trouble at all.
Yeah, and having won race 1, if he gets a podium in this one, it's still a good points haul. It's just not how he wanted his race to have finished. Barber here, 10th place, having some more problems, but Trevor Mack, we're back with him because he is going to take another spot, puts himself into the top 5 now. Shane Bowen there, clearly nothing in a straight line, as Trevor Mack has blown past and into 5th place.
An excellent run from him too. I mean, he's just come alive in this second race he has, so top 5 for him. I'm really liking the way this field is stacking up in race 2. You know, race 1, we had quite a bit of chaos, but everyone's calmed down in the hotter conditions and put on a good show.
Yeah, somewhat. We mentioned some of the fights for Gavin Barber. He's back onto the pit lane again for a second time. Behind those trees, just trust us. Yeah, so a new front wing for him. He'll get back out there probably maybe 10th, 11th, or somewhere down there. Hasn't lost a whole lot of spots from that, but he did lose that front wing. This is De Silva, also a man with a new front wing and on a mission. Will Leslie is probably wishing he had a new front wing on that one. That's probably been the source of some of his troubles. The front wing on the Kinetic Sport car not working as optimally as it should.
Yeah, certainly not. Leslie's been one of the more embattled drivers in this race. He's always been dealing with some kind of issue, but he's just managed to hold on to those spots in the top 10. With only a couple of laps left next time they cross the line, this feels inevitable versus De Silva.
Yeah, indeed. Probably, no fresh tyres at the last stop from De Silva. 2 seconds, I don't think that's enough to change any of the tyres on the Indy cars. So he kept the warm tyres when he took the new nose cone. And so De Silva will have that marked, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so, especially through turn 1. Look at the difference in speed. Well, that's caught Will Leslie out. There we go. That's not the way I think anyone wanted that to end. Will Leslie will have to make his way all the way back around to the pits. Now have a look at this. This modem simulation replay. The difference in speed in the corner.
That's
Set
what
to
it
check
was.
up.
Yeah, just nowhere near as quick through turn 1 was Will Leslie, and for whatever reason, De Silva just did not anticipate that, and he's got right into the back of him through turn 1 here, and that's damage for De Silva, but pretty well race ending for Leslie. And we saw after that the thing was crabbing at a horrible angle.
Yeah, and he's still trying to get his way back to the pit. Meanwhile, Christopher Norton right there, taking the victory in race 2. We were briefly distracted from that. But oh my goodness, how good is the performance from Brett Geraerts? A very well-deserved second place coming up for him. And Cam Dance making his way around to take third. But Norton, easily the best performer out there in race 2.
Yeah, recovered from his issues to take the win that maybe he thought he could have had in race 1. De Silva giving this position back to Will Leslie. Is that what we're seeing here?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, these guys still have yet to take the checkered, so there we go. Sorting that situation out amongst themselves. I suspect there may still be some stewards action taken, though.
Certainly a gentlemanly thing to do there. And really, I mean, we couldn't pin any blame on that incident on Will Leslie. It was De Silva running into the back of an injured car effectively, and Cam Dance has taken even more off his front wing, but a lap clear of everyone else, I think. So the final lap, he just needed to bring it around to make it a double podium finish in the 2 races.
Exactly right. Well, we're going to take a quick look now at how things stacked up. Christopher Norton taking the win by nearly a minute from Brett Geraerts and Cam Dance behind him. Those guys, only the top 3 on the lead lap. So Bernal, Mack, Bowen, Leslie, and De Silva, your top 8. Not the one that we were expecting, but all of those guys drove well to take those positions.
Certainly both of the races throwing up surprises, that's for sure. 9th place is Daniel Stevens. 10th is John King. 11th, Gavin Barber, late pit stop for him. 12th, Robert Northway, recovering from a lap 1 incident. 13th place goes to Alexander Sheridan. 14th is Ryan DeCartia McCarthy. 15th is Matt Hunter. And 16th place, Wayne Taylor.
Roy Clark leads up 17th position. Dave Douglas in 18th. Dwayne Burns, one of the bigger heartbreaks from this one. He soldiered on as long as he could, but a pristine lack of front-end grip put paid to that. Clote and Kukas also out of this one. And then we get to retiring station. Riley Curtis, Mirko Dortanak, Chris Purnell, Michael Skurlock, Aldis Pateklis, and Eric Thorpe, all drivers that would have had an excellent shot at victory today, but it was cruelly taken from them.
Yeah, indeed. I think this really gave everything we were expecting from the Indy cars at Detroit Grand Prix. Such a tough track, very tough cars in these confines, and outside of maybe your podium places, everything was up in the air all race.
Absolutely. Speaking of podium places, we have our driver interviews after race 2. We'll go to Brett Geraerts first. 2nd place finish in race 2, Brett. Really good run for you.
Yeah, cheers, Reese. Thanks for that, mate. Yeah, bit better run than what race 1 was anyway.
Yeah, it definitely seemed that way. What was the difference between the two sessions for you? Did something just click in race 2?
Yeah, I think race 1 I was playing catch up after being involved in the turn 1 and 2 incident, and yeah, just playing catch up from there, just pushing too much. Whereas this race, I settled in quite nice, quite early, and yeah, it wasn't required to push that much.
Yeah, not pushing seemed to be the name of the game, and the pit stops as well played into that.
Yeah, it did. I got up to third and had my own spin all by myself, and I wasn't sure if I'd even made the pit window at that stage until a teammate told me that I actually had made the window. It's a little bit scary there, but yeah, I was quite pleased to see Dwayne pull off there after we were battling for a while.
Well, with that second place, you must certainly be happy with how at least the second half of this weekend has gone for you.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. We put a lot of work in as a team. Kudos to Dan on the setup. It was pretty on point. But yeah, as a whole, the team put in a lot of laps over the week. So this is just reward for the team, just not for me.
Speaking of the team, any shout-outs you'd like to give in particular?
Absolutely, mate. So all the boys that are in the team, absolutely. Dan on the setups, like I said, they were on point. And to our sponsors, WPC Concreting, Snap-on Tools, Blacktown, Auto Kings. Yeah, just we couldn't do it without the support of you guys.
Thanks very much for joining us in the commentary box, Brett Durant, your second place finisher in race 2. Now we're going to go to the race 2 winner, Christopher Norton, in car 22. Chris, that was perhaps the biggest turnaround race to race I've seen in quite a while.
Yeah, thanks, Reese. It was, I wasn't really happy with the car and the cool conditions of the first race, but when I saw it was really warm in that second one, I just, I knew I was in for a good one and just pushed it hard.
Definitely seemed that way. What happened to you in race 1? It was certainly a chaotic one that, a race of attrition where many drivers were taken out. From your perspective, what was it like?
It was crazy, man. People were everywhere. Race 1, I was just struggling to get tire pressure and tire temperature. So the first sort of 3-4 laps were really, really tricky. And then I actually ended up behind Cam, and I wanted to send it, but I also wanted to make sure it was clean because I was a lap down, and just trying to set one up, I put it in the wall. So it was a bit embarrassing, but thankfully I redeemed myself in race 2.
It was certainly a great race too for you, and I guess it was helped quite a bit by the fact that these cars are so aerodynamically sensitive and this track is so narrow that not having cars in front of you for that first section of the race is a big advantage.
Yeah, well, when Cam got the jump on me, I wasn't going to let him have it, so I definitely went for it when I had a shot there, and it definitely made the difference having that clean air, especially when it comes to traffic. You could sort of pick your own way through it rather than relying on a guy in front.
Well, next round of this series is the 2.4 hours of Spa in July, and the spirits must be incredibly high for you going into that.
Yeah, I embarrassed myself last year in that with no pace, so hopefully if I can make it, then I'll go and redeem myself again for last.
Any shout-outs in particular you'd like to give?
Oh, to my mum and dad, they embarrass me with this all the time. So, that's it. I'm just a one-man show here in my rig. So, it's just, it's having fun on my own, really.
Well done anyway, Christopher Norton, your race 2 winner. And David, to finish off driver interviews, we got Cam Dance capping it off.
Yeah, indeed. Cam, I think this was a little bit of a tough race for you, but you really can't be disappointed with 2 podium finishes. Where did it come unravelled in the end for this one?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a stinker that second race. Obviously, didn't quite get the win, but pretty much got most points out of anyone in this round, so I'm pretty happy to walk away with that and still hold on to the championship lead by another solid margin. So, yeah, can't complain at all getting 2 podiums, but yeah, just lap traffic. I tried to set up a pass like Chris did at one point in the first race and just looped it straight in the wall. So yeah, a little bit unfortunate, but it happens sometimes.
Overall, your thoughts about the IndyCar at this circuit? I mean, we thought it was always going to be tough for everyone, a difficult car, a difficult track, and it really looked like a case of who can just keep it on the island, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I enjoy the open wheelers and street circuits more or less, so it's not too much of a deal for me. But yeah, it was definitely a massive challenge just keeping it on the island, like you said, and making sure you don't end up in the concrete at all. So yeah, at least next round we're going to have quite a bit of runoff at Spa, and obviously a little bit different machinery, GT3. So going to be interesting to see how that one goes.
If the team was charging you for new front wings, do you think you'd drive a little bit differently?
Yeah, probably, although only 2 front wings, so it wasn't a total disaster. So yeah, could have been a lot worse, but yeah, it's a case of it's virtual, so don't have to pay for it.
Well, I can congratulate you on your win in race 1, your podium in race 2, and what I think will be, like you said, the biggest points haul from this round. Anyone to thank from you, Cam?
Yeah, just like to thank the boys at TTO Esports as always, and our sponsors, SimWorks, Race Simulations, Down Under Graphics, Thigh Designs, and you guys for putting on an awesome broadcast.
More than welcome, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next round of this series. Well, Reese, over to you.
Yes, indeed. And wow, what an event it was. I mean, the Majors always turns it up in some form or another, but there's something about IndyCars around Belle Isle that just turns up the heat knob a little bit higher. And we got some excellent performances out of this one. I'm really hyped for the Spa 2.4 next month.
Yeah, fantastic. We can all look forward to that one. And some drivers can look back on this race fondly, but I think quite a few will be happy to see the back of this round.
Yes, indeed. Well, if you're looking for your racing fix on SimSpeed TV and on the iRacing Esports Network, we have got a stacked week lined up. Monday onwards, we have the official iRacing V8 series on Monday night. Then we've got the ASC Dirt on Tuesday. Sprint cars, love it. Friday, we've got the Geodesic GoPro Championship on the Esports Network. And on Sunday, once again, of course, the Virtual Racing School V8 Scops. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We hope to see you at our upcoming broadcasts through the week. Of course, big support to the Cancer Council, who is being supported by the Majors for this round. Make sure to donate and have a good one. We wish you all the best here at SimSpeed TV on the iRacing Esports Network. Catch you later.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up top.
Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Section's very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go! Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?